Hi, I'm Dr. Bradley Nelson, author of The Emotion Code and creator of the Body Code System. If you're interested in really hacking your life and making your life better, you really need to be listening to my friend, Joel, on the Hacked Life podcast.
All right, I'm here with Dr. Bradley Nelson. He is a world-renowned energy healing expert and lecturer and author of The Emotion Code and creator of the Body Code System. Dr. Nelson, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. It's really great to be here.
This is going to be one of, I think, the best podcast of 2022 for me. And I want to tell people why before we even just jump into your story. But I was recently at a health conference, and we were actually doing muscle testing. And your book came up. And as a health coach and someone who coaches a lot of people, I have noticed just in my own coaching how much emotions and things come into play. Then I had heard about you. I started reading your book. My mind was blown. I'm like, I gotta talk to this guy. I gotta get this guy on the podcast. Your team was so gracious and got back to me right away. And so I'm super excited because I think people are their minds are going to be blown, and they don't really understand, I think, how much emotions play into health. So
it's huge.
Really excited. Before we go into that though, can you just tell everybody your background and then I'm just curious, how did you stumble into this?
Well, it's really interesting. My journey actually began when I was 7 years old. Something really miraculous happened to me. I was really sick with the measles, and I had overheard my parents talking, and I knew the plan was the next day I was going into the hospital into something called an oxygen tent. Okay, they don't do those anymore, but they did back then. And I didn't know what an oxygen tent was. The tent part sounded kind of interesting, but anyway, my parents had made a bed for me upstairs on this couch in the living room so I could be near their bedroom. And I'm lying there feeling really, really sick. I'm 7 years old, but I remember every detail of this because of what happened. And my parents come into the room, and my mother said to my father, she said, "Honey, will you kneel down and say a prayer for our boy here so he'll be able to get well?" So they did. Now, my dad was a contractor. He was a real estate guy. He wasn't some kind of healer or something supernatural, but I think they were really worried about me. I was really sick. So my dad is saying this prayer, and in the middle of this prayer, something unbelievable happens. This change happens to me. It starts at the top of my head, and it goes whoosh through my body to the soles of my feet, and I'm instantly made completely well. Now, to go from being really sick one moment to being totally vibrantly healthy in the next instant is so bizarre and so impossible, really, that if that ever happens, you can't forget it. It's just burned into every molecule, every particle of your being. And so I remember everything that happened. And that taught me something. That taught me at that young age, it taught me that apparently there's a higher power we can draw upon and get help sometimes when we need it. So I kind of filed that away. And then I got involved in computers and programming, and I was healed of kidney disease by some alternative holistic doctors when I was about 13. And I decided that's what I wanted to do with my life. But then when I got involved in computers and programming and so on, I was going a different direction. And it was prayer, really, and it was an answer to prayer that brought me back to the healing arts. So when I got into practice, I developed this habit of before I'd go to work on somebody, and I did this for about 20 years, before I'd go to work on somebody, I would just offer this short, silent prayer for help, just trying to ask, the higher power to help me with this person, because I figured I needed all the help I could get, right? And but I'll tell you, Joel, there were times during those years when somebody would come in to see me, and I didn't know how to approach their problem, I didn't know how to help them. And I would offer this silent prayer. And it was just a momentary pause, really. Nobody ever knew. I never told anybody that I was actually saying a prayer for them. It's just a private, personal habit, really. But in those situations, there were times when, in response to that asking, I would receive, and it would just be like a huge download of information. It was like data would just flood into me and understanding. It was crazy. That didn't happen very often. That was very much the exception rather than the rule. But I learned some really powerful things about who we really are and what these bodies really are, and how to take care of our bodies. And it's not what we learn in biology, really, and it's not what we understand from mainstream medicine either. It's something really different.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's funny, and you remind me a lot of a mentor and a healer that I know, Dr. Pete Goldman, who I don't know if you know him. He's a chiropractor as well, and he is a disciple of Dr. Thurman Fleet, and he talks a lot about metaphysics and just how there's a whole different realm of healing that people are not tapped into. I think we just think of this physical and biological way of healing people. Take more vitamins or do this, right? And there's so much more that we don't understand.
Right, exactly. Well, think about it. I mean, when I was 7 years old, I had that miraculous thing that happened. Well, that's not even supposed to be possible, not even remotely in Western biology and Western medicine. Yet it happened.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I learned is that during those years I was in practice, I found that the subconscious mind is very willing to give answers. And so what does that mean? Well, we have this conscious mind where we spend all of our waking hours and we take our tests and we have our relationships and we make our meals and make our jobs and careers and things. And when we go to sleep, the conscious mind shuts down. The subconscious mind never shuts down, and it is vastly more intelligent than our conscious mind. Really, our conscious mind is kind of just along for the ride. The subconscious mind is the part of you that's so vastly intelligent. I mean, it can take the breakfast that you had and it can convert that into new red blood cells, and I mean all kinds of things. It's just unbelievable, really. It's so intelligent that we really have not yet begun to wrap our minds around how intelligent the subconscious mind really is. We can document what it does, but it's unbelievable, really. And the subconscious mind of every single person is doing all of those unbelievable things, keeping us alive from moment to moment. And animals too. The subconscious mind of an animal is keeping it alive and doing all of those things for it. So there's this miracle that's ongoing with all of us all the time, from one moment to another. It's a miracle that we are going from one moment to another, really, and that our bodies don't just fly apart, because our bodies are made of energy, and all those energies are just kind of flying in formation, giving us this experience that we're having in this world. So it's pretty wild when you start thinking about that we're even alive.
Yeah. And I love that you talked about the subconscious mind. Something I've been diving into a lot lately. And I think a lot of us, we like to think that we're very logical beings, right? That
sure,
we are always in the conscious. The subconscious, yeah, whatever. But from what I understand, like 95% of our thoughts and our emotions, our decisions are based on the subconscious, not our conscious mind, which is maybe like 5% of our decision making. And so it would behoove us to pay attention to the subconscious, right?
Well, absolutely. See, the subconscious mind is really running us. And I believe the heart is really the seat of the subconscious. And it was interesting because a number of years ago, some scientists were doing some studies looking at the nerve conduction between the heart and the brain. And what they were expecting was that they would see most of the instructions going from the brain and the head to the heart. And they found just the opposite. They found that the vast majority of the messages between the brain and the heart were going from the heart to the brain, indicating that the brain is obeying the messages that are sent by the heart. And we now know the heart is really a second brain, and it's got gray matter and white matter, and it records the memories of the things that you really love, the real affinities that you have. And so it's there's a whole lot to that. And I believe we're living now in the age of the heart, where we're learning about the heart and what it really is, what it does, and how important it is to start living our lives from our heart. Because see, for all these thousands of years, we've been living from this brain, and this brain doesn't feel anything, see? So in this brain, it makes perfect sense to drop bombs on people, to settle differences and things, and use war to accomplish goals and things. And this brain, the heart brain, is totally different than that. It's where we feel. And that that takes us to that topic of the heart wall, really.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
So we might as well talk about that now, I guess.
Yeah. That was on my list of questions to ask you, the heart wall. And it's one of the things that I'm curious about, and we'll backtrack because I do want to talk about trapped emotions. But you talked a lot about in the book trapped emotions, and then there's like this separate chapter where you talk about the heart wall.
Right.
And so I'm really curious, like, how they kind of differ, or I'm sure you'll talk about that. Yeah. So.
Right. Well, one of the things that I learned when I was in practice working with people, and I had no shortage of people, and they were of all different ages, and they had all different kinds of problems, mental, emotional, physical issues. I saw the gamut. And what I found was that all these people, no matter how young or old they were, no matter what their complaint was, they all had something in common. And I came to call that their emotional baggage. And to understand what emotional baggage is, and it took me quite a while to figure this out, but if you think about the body, that the body is just a very complex energy field, and then you think about emotions. And what are emotions really? When you're feeling an emotion of resentment or anger or grief or sadness or something, what's really going on in the body? What's really happening? What is an emotion really? We can describe them, but what are they? Well, because everything is energy. The body itself is energy. The chair you're sitting on, the table in front of you, the walls of your home, the earth, the sun, the moon, the stars, everything, if you get right down to the very fundamental basis of it all, everything is made of energy. And so your body is made of energy, even though it seems solid and so on, and has, takes up a three-dimensional sort of space and so on, yet we are energy beings. In fact, quantum physicists love to talk about this stuff. In fact, some of these quantum physicists recently, I think it was a couple of years ago, made some calculations, and they figured out that if you could remove all the empty space from everyone's body on Earth, you could fit all 7.8 billion of us into a box the size of a sugar cube.
Wow.
And would it be crowded? Well, it would be, but theoretically you could do that. And so when you're feeling an intense emotion, whatever it might be, anger, sadness, grief, resentment, what's going on a quantum level in the body is that you're feeling a new vibration, because every emotion has a vibration. They're all different, right? And so whatever emotion you're feeling on a quantum level, you're feeling a certain new frequency, a certain vibration. And if that emotion is powerful enough, or if you choose to bury that emotion, then that energy becomes trapped in the body. And we call these trapped emotions. And a trapped emotion, we find, is a little ball of energy from about the size of a baseball to about the size of a softball. And these can lodge anywhere in the body. And wherever they lodge, they will tend to create this distorting force where they distort the normal energy field of the body. And because that's all the body is an energy field, when you distort that energy field, you're interfering with the chemical reactions taking place in that little area, within that sphere. You're interfering with the blood flow and the lymph flow to some degree, and the flow of acupuncture meridian energy in that area. And so this is the reason why when people have trapped emotions, a lot of the time they'll have some kind of physical symptom. Not always, but often they do. In fact, we find that about 90% of all the physical pain that people have is actually due to their emotional baggage. And wow. I'll never forget, the first time I saw this actually was a woman that came in to me, and I'd seen her before, but it had been a few months. She comes in, all of a sudden she says she feels like she's having a heart attack. The left side of her face is totally numb. Her left arm is totally numb. She's got this difficulty breathing and this crushing chest pain. And I told my staff, look, I think she's having a heart attack, but give me just a minute with her, and then we might need to call an ambulance. Luckily, we were really close to a medical center. So I took about 1 minute with her, and I started doing some testing using the emotion code, and found that she had a trapped emotion. The emotion was grief. And asking a few more questions, because we can tap into the subconscious mind, and that's what we teach people how to do. I found that this had occurred 3 years earlier. And when I arrived at that, she burst into tears, and she said, I can't believe that's still affecting me. She said, I thought I dealt with all that. And I said, well, what in the world happened? And she said that 3 years before, her husband had been having an affair, and she found out about it and confronted him with the evidence, and the marriage just blew up, and that was the end of that marriage. And she had spent about a year in therapy dealing with all this mentally, because she'd been deeply betrayed. She was really, really deeply in love with this guy and was planning on being with him forever, but he betrayed her. And so she spent this time in therapy, and then had even recently gotten remarried. So as far as she was concerned, that guy was just the ex. but as far as her body was concerned, that energy was still there. And so I released that energy by just passing a magnet down her spine a few times, which is all we do. Once you find one of these and identify it, it's easy, very quick to release these. And the feeling came back into her face and into her arm within about 3 seconds. And the chest pain was just gone. The difficulty breathing was all totally gone. Unbelievable, right? And about 10 minutes later, she left the office after laughing and joking with my staff and me. And I remember sitting down at my desk after she left, and my head was kind of spinning. And I was thinking, what did I just witness? What was that? How is it possible that an emotion that's trapped in the body can create, in her case, full-blown symptoms of a heart attack? Well, we now know that people can die from a broken heart, and they call it cardiac syndrome. It's the Japanese that discovered it. They called it Takotsubo syndrome. And anyway, it's so interesting. I think that she would have been one of those people who probably would have died. She probably would have really had a heart attack, and it probably would have, her heart would have stopped. And but she didn't, because we released that emotion, and so she's still alive. And she and I are still connected. She has a horse ranch in Oregon and is a great friend still. So
that's phenomenal.
It was 30 years ago. Give or take.
Oh my God! Wow. And on that note, you're talking about just healing. There's this phrase in the book that I underlined, and you wrote in there, every cancer patient that you ever treated, you said had a trapped emotion, and it just tells to that story that you're just talking about. I mean, it really highlights that, like every single one, like. It's mind-blowing. That's
just how it is. Well, in fact, every disease process that I've seen now in 33 years or 34 years, I guess, has had emotional baggage, trapped emotions, as a component. So think about that. I mean, every disease process, everything. I mean, from infertility to asthma to digestive disorders to Crohn's disease to cancer. I mean, you name it. All of them have an emotional component. And so sometimes when you remove that emotional component that's driving those symptoms, sometimes that's enough for the body to get the upper hand. And sometimes that's enough to help that disease to heal and go away. We don't, I don't claim that the emotion code cures any diseases or anything. All the emotion code is just a way to find that emotional baggage that's going on that you're dragging around in your life. And maybe some of that was from you when you used to cry yourself to sleep at night when you were a kid because your parents were miserable and arguing all the time. Or maybe it's from your breakups or divorce, or maybe from when you were bullied as a child. Or, we all go through emotional highs and lows, and it's usually those emotional lows sometimes that end up creating this emotional baggage for us. So,
one of the things I found amazing too in your book, and you just highlighted it, like as a child, right? I have 2 boys, 8 and 4, and so they're teaching me. I always say I'm learning more from them than I could have possibly learned from any podcast, book, certification, anything. But one of the things you mentioned was that, we can inherit these emotions, or they can be preconceived before conception. So how is that possible? Like, how can these emotions, like, how could my son, for example, it could be a generational thing, or his mother and I could be transmitting emotions before he's even born?
Yeah, I really believe that everybody inherits some emotional energy from mom or dad that they might have received from their mom or dad, and that sometimes may go back for many, many generations. So scientists are finding out that this happens with animals, for example. They're finding out that even lower animals will transmit somehow down the line traumatic experiences to help protect their offspring, to help protect their descendants. For example, let's say that you're an elk and you're at a certain meadow on the side of the mountain, and you're attacked by a pack of wolves, and they almost take you down and kill you, but you escape. You probably have some emotional baggage about that, some emotional energy that's trapped in your body. And then when you conceive a new elk, I'm not sure what baby elk are called, elklets. Yeah. Anyway, when you conceive one of those, an offspring, then your subconscious mind may decide to share that energy. And so that energy may pass down. And what will happen is for generations, the other elks will, or the other elk, I guess you'd say, they'll avoid that area. They won't know why. They just won't go there. They'll get a bad feeling about it and they'll just stay away. And they've done studies like this with animals in the lab, and they don't know how these memories are passed down, but it's a genetic kind of thing. But how that possibly is happening, Western medicine doesn't know. But what it is it's passed down in the form of these energies that we call inherited trapped emotions. And so, we all have these. And it's exciting to get rid of these because, they... in fact, I'll tell you a story from the book that's kind of wild, if you want.
Please. You've got so many great stories in the book. People need to pick up the book and just read it. It's so good. Anyways.
One of the reasons I wrote the book was because I was afraid I was going to start forgetting these stories, because I'm getting older. But I was at an event a few years ago, and there was I asked for a volunteer, and this woman came up out of the audience. I asked for somebody that was really in pain. So this woman comes up and hobbles up out of the audience, and she tells me that she's had this really severe hip pain. On a 0 to 10 scale of pain, where 10 is the most you can imagine, she was a 9. So she was really hurting. It had been going on for a year, and she'd seen a couple of doctors for it. They hadn't been able to help her. And so I tested her and found that she had this inherited trapped emotion of fear that she had gotten from her father when she was conceived, and he'd gotten it from his father when he was conceived. And now I'm testing her. I'm asking questions to get these answers from her body, and her subconscious mind is responding through. She's holding her arm out, and we call this kinesiology or muscle testing. I'm asking questions, and her arm is staying strong for yes answers, and it's going weak for no answers. And as I do, and we teach you how to do this in the book, but as I'm doing this, I find out that this inherited trapped emotion of fear that she got from her father, it went back, stayed in the father's line. It went back 12 generations. And so when we arrived at that, one of the things that I have found over many, many years of doing this is that these ancestors of ours seem to be very interested in what's going on with us. And we've had, over many years of doing this, I've talked to a lot of different people who have that ability to see spirits that other people don't see. It's kind of a gift that some people have. Seems to be becoming maybe a little more common, actually, than it used to be. But anyway, I thought just for fun, because I can't see these spirits, but I thought just for fun I would test her to see if those ancestors were there with us, which sounds weird, but actually, when you think about it, it's actually really normal. Because they're there because they're about to have something released from them as well. See, because when an ancestor passes down an emotional energy, they keep that energy. Even though they die physically, they live on as spirits, and they still are carrying that emotional baggage. And so all of them carry it. And so I tested her and asked if those ancestors were there with us, and they were. And I asked, well, are they? And this is something that I do just because it's so interesting. I can't see them, but I asked, all right, are these ancestors, are they floating around in the air over the audience? And I got a no, very clearly. And I said, well, are they sitting out in the audience there, out in those chairs? No. Are they up here on the stage with us? Yes. And that's always how it is. They're always right there, kind of gathering around their loved one, right? Because we can't see them, but I think the day will come when we all will be able to, because they're part of this world just like us. So anyway, I released that trapped emotion and that inherited trapped emotion of fear from all those generations back. So then I said, okay, why don't you walk around? Well, she starts walking, then she starts dancing because the pain that she'd had that was so severe was completely gone, zeroed out. Yeah. In fact, I ran into her a year later, it was still gone. But here's the interesting thing. When she went back and sat down, and I finished my lecture, and then when it was over, I went back out to our booth. We had a booth with some of our staff, and a woman came up to me after about a minute, and she said, listen, she said, Dr. Nelson, I was in your lecture. She said, I just wanted you to know something. She said, I'm one of those people that can see those spirits. It's kind of been a gift, kind of been a curse. I've had it all my life. And she said, I wanted you to know that what I saw was exactly what you were talking about. She said, there were those grandfathers were there on the stage with you guys. I could see them. She said, there was something else going on I don't know that you were aware of. She said, I saw surrounding the stage about 200 spirits, and it came to me who they were. They were this woman's yet-to-be-born posterity, and they were there rejoicing that they weren't going to have to take on this woman's crippling emotional baggage.
Wow.
And the joke is that's when the last hair fell out, That was it. Gave up. So
yeah, we've got so many great stories in the book just like that. One of the great ones I love too is when you talk about muscle testing and how you faced in one of your seminars, you faced a not a client, but someone that came up and volunteered. You faced a volunteer away from the audience, and you give the audience instructions to like send hate and evil towards thoughts towards these people. And when you do a muscle test, their arm drops. But then when you send joy, love, all the good things, their arm stays strong. So yeah, it's just so fascinating. And you do the same thing. Even another one I love in the book is you have a packet of vitamin C in an envelope, and they don't know what it is, and you have a packet of sugar. Same thing. When the vitamin C, they test the arm, strong. When they do the sugar, weakens the arm. So there's something going on there.
Well, these subconscious minds of ours are incredibly intelligent. I mean, far more than we can even imagine. And they're capable of sensing things. And, think about it. You walk into a dark, dark room where you can't see anything. If there's someone else in that room, you know it, right?
Yeah.
And how does that work? Well, there's just so much going on that we aren't aware of. I mean, for example, in Vietnam, they used scouts in the Green Berets who were Native American guys that had really long hair. And as long as the hair was long, they could sense the enemy. But they made them cut their hair, and they lost that ability. So then eventually they let them grow their hair back, is how I understand it. But, it's just so fascinating. There's so much going on with our existence, and the reality that we have been really led to believe in is not necessarily the reality that is real, right?
Yeah.
So,
I'm curious.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I wanted to ask you, when I'm reading your book, you have so many stories: anxiety, physical pain, bad knees, heartache, depression, carpal tunnel, weight loss, allergies. Again, you can't say you cured, but you rebalanced their body and it withered away, and all these symptoms got better. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
So then, our body is built in a smart so-called way to evolve and last. Any idea, why is our body trapping these emotions? And, why are we holding on to these things? Is it a protection mechanism? Any ideas?
Well, you can think of it this way. When we have an emotional experience, and we have countless emotional experiences during our lifetime, it's only a small fraction of those that result in us trapping an emotion. And so when we have an emotional experience, what's really going on? Well, we feel the emotion, and that emotion that we're feeling is a frequency, and it's a message that's coming from the deep subconscious. And there are two situations that occur where we tend to trap these emotions. One situation is where maybe we've been taught that the emotion of anger, for example, maybe that's a really bad emotion. Maybe we never want to allow ourselves to ever feel that. So let's say that somebody does something that wrongs us, and we start to feel that emotion of anger, and maybe rightfully so, but we decide because we've made a decision that we should never feel that, we bury that. We don't allow ourselves to feel it. Well, every emotional experience you can think of as being like a loop, okay? So now what we have is we have an open loop, okay? It's a loop that hasn't really completed. The emotional experience has not been completed because we buried it. So now what we have is a trapped emotion. And that's kind of what it is, how that works. Another experience that, or another way we can trap these is if an emotion comes up for us and we decide to not just feel the emotion, but to become really involved with it, to enhance it, to become really upset, really angry, really resentful, whatever it is. So that's the other kind of circumstance that will result in an emotion becoming trapped, because we didn't allow ourselves to just kind of experience the emotion and then allow it to go away. We got way too involved with it, and we enhanced it and we augmented it. And so we've got those two kinds of situations that create these trapped emotions. But again, each one of these is like a little loop of an emotional experience. And so the energy is still stuck in the body because the experience hasn't ended. So when we identify a trapped emotion using this process that we've developed that we call the emotion code, all we're doing is we're finding those emotional loops that weren't really completed, where the energy is still in the body, and then we allow the body to tell us if there's anything else it needs to know. For example, do we need to dig deeper? Do we need to know who was involved or when this occurred? And usually you don't need to know too much. You can just find that emotion and then release it, and it's gone. But I mean, what's really amazing, if you think about this, that 90% of all the physical pain that people have is due to trapped emotions. Think about all the people that are taking all kinds of drugs, and think of all the addiction and all. There's just so much pain that's going on, and so much of it can be gotten rid of by just releasing the emotional baggage that's there. And I've seen it, I mean, countless times. And when people get the Emotion Code book and they try this for themselves, because it's easy enough to do that you can try it for yourself and do it for yourself and for your friends and family members and so on. When they start having these experiences and they start realizing, oh my gosh, my pain's gone, my back pain is gone, I've had that for 20 years, or my migraine is gone. That's really what's driving this. And then the other thing that's driving this success all over the world, we're opening up 15 new countries, by the way, this year in Europe. And we're really excited about that. But you can see some of the translations that we've got on the wall behind me. This is Swedish. This one, the yellow one just came out. It's kind of fun.
Yes, nice.
But anyway, the other thing that's exciting that's driving this is this phenomenon of the heart wall. And so what is the heart wall? Well, let's go back to the 1960s when doctors first started doing heart transplants. What they found was that people would sometimes come back to them and they would say, since I got my heart transplant, things are weird because I never used to care for baseball. Now I'm at every baseball game. Why is that? Or they would say things like, I never cared for Chinese food. Now I'm eating it all the time. And or they'd say, my taste in music has totally changed. I never cared for classical music. Now I'm listening to it all the time. And certain passages are like, I just can't get out of my head. And I play those loud, Or sometimes people would say things like, I have memories now, since I got this heart, of being in places that I never in my whole life have ever visited. It's really strange what's going on. Or they'd say, my handwriting has totally changed. And in every case, when these people were connected with the family of the heart donor, they would find out, oh yes, our daughter visited Rome every year, and now you have memories of being in Rome, but you say you've never been there in your whole life? Well, those must be her memories? How weird is that? Or they'd say, oh, that's our son's handwriting. Now you have that? How strange is that, right? Really crazy things. Now, there are whole books written about this, and it's called cellular memory. There have been movies made about it and so on. But the ancients believed that the heart was the seat of the soul and the source of love and creativity and romance. I mean, even now, and this has been going on for thousands of years, if it's Valentine's Day, for example, and somebody gives you something, well, if you're lucky, it might be a heart-shaped box of something good, right? And so that heart symbol is really universal throughout the world. And so it's so fascinating. Well, what happened was we had this experience where it was shown to us in an interesting way. My wife and I really had this experience together where it was shown to us that she had a wall around her heart. She had put up a wall around her heart when she was when she was 2 years old. She was born into a very volatile family. Her dad was kind of a rageaholic. And by age 2, she had felt like her heart was going to break because of all this going on. And so she started to put up a wall to protect her heart from being broken, see? And the price that she paid was, it was easy for her to feel negative emotions, hard to feel positive ones. It was easy to feel depressed, easy to feel anxiety, hard to feel really connected with other people. In fact, she always felt like she was on the outside looking in, really, with any group she was ever with. Even friends she'd known for years, she always felt like she was kind of, what would you say, kind of like the odd person out, right? Like she didn't really belong there. And so we found that she had a wall, and that wall was made of layers of her emotional baggage, trapped emotions. So we started releasing those trapped emotions, and took us a couple of weeks. When the last one was released, all of a sudden, she was with a group of people, and all of a sudden felt like she belonged for the first time. Totally changed her life. And, there are so many stories. We've got over 10,000 testimonials now from people all over the world who are finding that, this is a real thing. It's one of the most important things I think you can do for yourself is to get rid of that wall. We find that 93% of people have put up this wall. And one of my very favorite stories from the Emotion Code book about this is that happened to me not long after we were shown this really from above. It was kind of one of those things where it was shown to us. This woman comes into my office, and she's got really severe neck pain. And she's seen a couple of other doctors for it, and they hadn't been able to help her. So as I'm talking with her, she tells me that she's 38 years old, she's a nurse, she's single, she hasn't dated in 8 years, she's never going to date again. And I said, well, why do you feel that way? She was dead serious. She was going to be single the rest of her life. And I said, what happened to you? She said that 8 years before, she was really deeply in love with this guy who dumped her and broke her heart. And that was it. No more dating ever again. So I tested her and found that she had a heart wall, again, which 93% of people have. And there were 3 trapped emotions that were making up these 3 layers of energy. It's like a force field, kind of. It's really interesting. Anyway, I released those 3 emotions. They all had to do with the breakup from 8 years before. And when I released the last one, suddenly the severe neck pain was just gone, totally gone. I didn't even have to touch her neck. And so she left the office feeling totally fine and didn't come back. 3 months later, she walks back into the office. And I said, hey, how are you? I haven't seen you for a while. What's going on? She said, my neck's been fine since I was here. But she said, you cleared that heart wall for me, and that really works because, she said, about 2 weeks after I was here, I found out that my childhood sweetheart has been living right around the corner from me for almost 8 years. And we're dating, and we're in love, and I think he's going to ask me to marry him. And I thought, wow, that's a big shift, right?
It's so cool, and it just reminds me of that law of attraction, the law of vibration, right? Like, that guy was always there.
Yes.
She just wasn't at the same, she just couldn't vibrate. She couldn't resonate at that level. And then once you cleared it, how serendipitous, right? Yeah. It was.
It's really amazing. So cool. Another favorite story of mine that I'm reminded of is one of our practitioners told me that her sister had been divorced for about 9 years, and finally called her up one day, and she said, listen, I'm tired of being alone. I need you to come over and work on me. And so she did, and she found she had a heart wall, and she cleared the heart wall. Well, neither one of them told anybody. This was on the weekend, right? And Monday, the phone starts ringing, and it's guys calling her sister, right? Calling her up, saying, hey, I haven't seen you in a long time. How are you? What's going on? And, the phone hadn't rung in a long time. So there's definitely something cosmic about our existence, and it's all about quantum physics, and we're all made of energy, and we're all connected. And so think about your own life. I mean, do you have a heart wall? You probably do. Most people do. What have you been through? Have you been through anything difficult? Have you ever felt like your heart was going to break, Joel?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Most people have had that feeling, and if you have that more than once or twice, you'll put up a wall. And then the problem is you go through the rest of your life with a wall, and it's like you're handicapped from not only from really connecting with other people and finding love or maintaining that love or having that love be as good as it can be, but you're also blocked from really being able to create what you want to create in this world. Because you see, I believe that every person has within their heart this perfect blueprint of what their life can be. But if you've got a heart wall, it's so much more difficult to really follow your heart. And that's such great advice that people give, but harder if you have a heart wall.
You know, one of the stories that in your book that really touched me was actually, I believe, a story about your children. Mm-hmm. And I think you have twins, correct?
I do.
Was that okay? So that was the right story. And you know, it's so interesting because my oldest, there's a lot of things that you were talking about, and I guess this son of yours was bad doctor, calling you a bad doctor. That came out of nowhere, right?
Yeah.
And that same thing has happened to me. And it happened around when my son was 3. And if I go back in that time too, there was a time where he was undergoing night terrors. Came out of nowhere. And you talk a lot about that in your book and how you were like, you know, I don't know if he has a trapped emotion. This is interesting. And when you cleared that, all of a sudden, things that you've seen in other children, night terrors, but then the whole bad doctor thing, you gave it stopped. All that stopped.
Yeah.
And so that really resonated with me. And I hope anybody that has kids or is listening, like, they can. I'm like, where's an emotional code practitioner I can go see right now, right? Like, because that story really resonated with me a lot. Wow. Right.
Yeah. That was incredibly moving for me too. And then the next day when I went back to work, I'm in my practice. I'm telling everybody about this, and one of the patients that had come in that day said, you know, I wonder if my daughter has a trapped emotion, because she said, my husband is an airline pilot. And so he's gone, you know, for a certain number of days periodically. And she said, when he comes back, our daughter, who I think she was about maybe 6, just runs and hides from him. And she said, it really breaks his heart. And so I said, well, bring her in, let's check her. And so she did. We checked her. She had a trapped emotion. And it was something like sadness about her dad being gone, I think. I can't remember now. But we released that trapped emotion. And then the following week, this woman came in again, and she said, you know what? She said, that really worked, because she said, when my husband came home from the trip, she said, our daughter just ran and jumped into his arms. And just such a beautiful thing. So, yes, kids get trapped emotions. Yeah. Animals get trapped emotions too. And so, you know, 90% of their problems, behavioral and physical, are also due to emotional baggage. And there's no other method really like this that makes it so simple to work on kids and animals and people. And kids can learn this themselves. Animals can't learn it themselves. It's not that easy.
Not yet.
But hopefully
yet,
soon.
You'll be coming out with the Emotion Code for Animals book.
Yeah.
You know, just a couple more questions and we'll wrap it up. But I'm curious for people are probably listening to this and thinking, hey, that sounds great. But in your practice and what you've seen over the last 34 years, if you release a trapped emotion, is that pretty permanent? Is that pretty sticky?
Yes, trapped emotions don't ever come back. When we find a trapped emotion and we release it, when you find one in this using the emotion code method, remember that what you're doing is you're closing an emotional loop. And if you follow the method as we teach it, then you'll be able to fully close that little loop, and it's gone forever. So we've never ever seen one come back in all of these years of doing this. So that's the beauty of this that you can get rid of this baggage, and you know, if you learn how to do it, you can do it on yourself. If you want a practitioner to do it for you, you can find people to do it for you. You want to get rid of your heart wall so that you can find your soulmate or whatever, you know, maximize your time in this world. We've got practitioners that can do that for you. You can go to discoverhealing.com, and we have a practitioner map, and we have staff practitioners, and you can find people that can help you. And one of the beautiful things about this work is that you don't have to even leave your home. They can do it online with you or remotely, whatever you want. And it works just the same because it's quantum physics.
It's energy. Energy's moving.
Yep.
I love that. And then could you just maybe like briefly kind of, if anybody's really interested in this, like what's a typical session like? I'm sure every practitioner has their own thing, but like how long do they last? And what's like the typical tempo of a session?
Yeah, I would say that probably the average session probably lasts half an hour. And if you're working with somebody live and in person, They may have you hold out your arm, and they may ask questions and get yes or no answers from you. In fact, you can try this on people. What you can do is you can, if you got a friend or somebody that you're with, you can actually just have them hold out their arm parallel to the floor and have them state their name. Like, for example, I would say, my name is Brad. Have them state their name, and then have them resist you as you press down on their arm. And then this is just a fun thing you can try. Have them say that their name is someone else's name. Like if I said, my name is Bob, and if you were to press down on my arm, I wouldn't be able to resist that downward pressure. And that's just an aspect of the subconscious mind, that it controls the conscious, or it controls the physical body. And so it can't really tell a lie without the body weakening to a degree, at least for a few seconds. And so you can try that. That's kind of a fun thing that you can do. But anyway, a session might look like they might ask you some questions and start getting some yes or no answers on you. They may test themselves and get answers on themselves, yes, no, no answers. If you're working with somebody at a distance, maybe over Zoom or Skype or something, it's the same thing, except you're just looking at each other through a little window. And the beautiful thing about it is there's really no barrier of distance, because energy is really kind of timeless and limitless. And so yeah, we have thousands. We've certified probably about 8,500 emotion code practitioners now in over 80 countries around the world. And most of them work with other people in other countries and other places that they might never actually visit. And yet many of whose lives they'll actually have changed by the time they're done. So,
yeah, it's really cool stuff. It's something I definitely want to get into and add to my practice, because I just see it all the time coming up. And man, what a great value to be able to add to people. And I know it'll do good. So, awesome stuff, man. The only last question I really had for you was about magnets. You talk a lot about magnets. Mm-hmm. Could you just briefly kind of talk about why you use them, and you've seen them be so efficacious?
Sure. Well, when I was first really discovering this work, I was using magnets, and I was using relatively expensive magnets, and I thought that you had to use those initially, and then I found that no, you didn't really need to use expensive magnets, and it doesn't really matter what kind of a magnet you use. For example, we sell magnets on our website at discoverhealing.com that look like this. It has the chart of emotions on it, but it's really just a refrigerator magnet. And so those kind of magnets work fine. To use the emotion code, we use a particular meridian in the body. A meridian is a little river of energy. And the one that we use is called the governing meridian, which starts at the tailbone and goes up the back and over the top of the head. And when we're ready to release a trapped emotion, we'll just swipe a magnet a few times like this over the head. And if it's inherited, we do it 10 times over the head. And so it's actually really simple. But we've also found that if you don't have a magnet, you can use your hand. Your hand is also magnetic. It's putting out a biomagnetic field. And so you don't have to get hung up on what kind of magnet to buy, or, getting an expensive magnet. If you got a Hello Kitty magnet on your fridge, or the magnet from your plumber, those will work just great.
Okay. Good to know. Awesome stuff. I want to jump into some quick lightning round questions, but before I do, is there anything that I didn't ask you that you wish I had?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, there's so much to talk about. I can talk for days about this, and often do, of course.
Yeah.
So I think we covered a lot of stuff. We're probably okay.
Okay, cool. All right, let's jump into some lightning round stuff and wrap this show up. This was great. Thank you. I'm curious, if the old you could see the new you, what would the new you say?
Well, I think if I could do that, I think that the me that I am now, talking to the older me, I think I would say that that the most important thing that you can do in your life is to develop your ability to love others unconditionally. That's the most important thing, and it's one of the only things we take with us. When people die and they go to the other side, they're often asked, questions like, how much love were you able to develop for your fellow beings, and how much knowledge were you able to gain? They're never, ever asked, how fancy of a car did you drive? Or, did you live in a really fancy place? Or, it's none of that. Yeah. It's just about unconditional love. And I think that love is the most powerful force in the whole universe. And it's part of what we teach with the emotion code. We teach our practitioners to connect with that higher power, for whatever you believe. It's not a religious thing. But if you believe that there is a higher power, ask for help, because then that opens that channel in mysterious ways. And when you focus love on the person that you're working with, even if that's you yourself, that's important. And also to cultivate a feeling of gratitude. What we teach people is that to really be a powerful healer, and anyone is capable of healing. It's a birthright that belongs to every single one of us in this world. It's all about love and gratitude, allowing your heart to fill with gratitude and also love. And then what happens is any of those emotions like dread or fear, those are just driven out of the heart, because they can't coexist with love and gratitude. So that's what it's about.
I love that. Great answer. What are some choices that you made that you think made you who you are today?
Well, one of the things that I've done consistently throughout my life is I've prayed. Prayer has been, and I really learned that when I was 7 and I was healed from the measles. It's been such an integral part of my life, asking for help. And like I said, there have been times when, just offering that short, silent prayer for help, where the information is just flooded into me like an avalanche of data. And again, that's kind of unusual, but I think that that higher power, God's source energy, creator, whatever you might refer to it as, fine, is aware of us all the time and everything that we're doing. And I think that really the idea that we are separated from God or from that higher power is really an illusion. It's really an illusion. I think that that it's almost like we're living in the Matrix, really. And we have all of these things and all of these constructs, and we get to live our life, and we're free to choose. And I think that life is kind of a school, and it's also a test. What are we going to choose here? Are we going to choose love, or are we going to choose hate? It's up to us. We can choose. Are we going to choose light? Are we going to choose dark? Good or bad? It's really up to us. But the wonderful thing about the emotion code and why it's coming into the world at this time is because, like I said, we all have this innate ability to heal, this birthright, I believe, that really belongs to every single one of us. Every man, woman, and child on this earth has that ability. But we've given that up a long time ago somewhere. But what the emotion code is doing is it's giving that back to people. Then it's giving them back the ability to heal. It's empowering them with that ability that we have had all along, but that we've just kind of lost track of.
Yeah, so good. I'm curious. You're such a force in the health and wellness world. Who inspires you, or is there anybody that you follow or that inspires you?
Well, there are some people that I really look up to and really admire, and the people that come to mind for me are people like Greg Braden, Joe Dispenza. There are lots of others. There's really a list of people. Tony Robbins is a friend of mine, not so much in the health space, but he was somebody that came along 35 years ago and actually changed my life. And then many, many years later, I was able to connect with him again, and he wrote the foreword for the Emotion Code.
I thought that was pretty neat.
Yeah, and he doesn't really write forewords, generally speaking. So that was kind of a neat thing. So there are, and there are so many people that have broken so much ground in helping us to understand. I mean, Deepak Chopra is one of the great ones, for example, and there are just so many. And in my own life, I've had some really wonderful mentors that have helped me to understand. And so what I'm trying to do is just give back. And I'm really, this is a mission to me to bring this work into the world. It isn't about me at all. I'm just the messenger. This is how I see it. I'm just the messenger to bring this work into the world, because it's really about you. And you can remove whoever you are. You can find your own emotional baggage. You can get rid of it. You can help these people around you that need your help. You'll be absolutely flabbergasted how much you can do and how much help you can give to these people that you care about. It's just astounding. So check it out.
Yeah, I love that. Any books that you'd recommend? Any books that I'm a big reader. Is there any books that stand out for you that you had a lot of impact on your life that you'd recommend somebody other than The Emotion Code? We know that it's right here.
Yeah, sure. Well, yeah, there are a couple of books that really stick out to me. I'll give you three actually.
Awesome.
One of them is a book called The Science of Getting Rich by a guy named Wallace Wattles. It really could be named The Science of Getting Whatever it is that you want to create in your life. But that's a great book. It was written back in like 1910. Another great book that came out around that same time, or maybe a little earlier, is one that everybody knows. It's called As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. That's a great book. And then another book that really has had an enormous influence on my life is actually a book called The Book of Mormon. And, there's a big Broadway play about that, but it actually is a real book. And that book has probably had a bigger influence on my life than any other book that I've ever read, because what it teaches you how to do is it teaches you how to really connect with the higher power and really get answers. And so I'd say those are my top three. There's there's a lot of other ones too, but those are the ones that come to mind at the moment.
Yeah, no, those are three great books. Last two questions and we'll wrap it up. Any rituals or hacks or practices that you do on a regular basis?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I do is there's a book that I read called Do What Matters Most. And there's another book for you. It's a great book. And one of the things that I try to do every week is I try to do something called pre-week planning, where I sit down and I actually think about the week and what I want to do. I try to create the week spiritually and think about the different roles that I have. Like all of us, I wear different hats. I've got a dad hat, and I've got a husband hat, and I've got an entrepreneur hat and a healer hat, and so on. And so what I do is I think about each one of those roles, and I've just been working on my goals actually for this year. And so what I do is I look at the goals that I've created for each one of those roles, and the question that I've asked myself is, when I get to the end of this year, what would really make me feel like I've accomplished something and really made progress in that role? And so then that's my guiding, that's my guidance really for each week. I look at each role and decide, okay, this is what I want to achieve. How can I do that this week? What can I do to move myself forward that week? And so that's a phenomenal book. It's by a guy named Steve Schallenberger. And he does business coaching. In fact, he's our business coach. And he and his son, Rob Schallenberger, they're great business coaches. It's a great book. It's called Do What Matters Most. Yeah.
Awesome. I love that. I'm going to pick that up.
Okay.
Oh, man. Last but not least, Dr. Bradley Nelson, where can people find you and your team and everything that you're doing?
Yeah, well, we've got a couple of websites, and that's the easiest way to find us, probably Discover Healing. We've got a Facebook for Discover Healing and Twitter. And then there's my personal website at drbradleynelson.com. And then you can find Dr. Bradley Nelson on Twitter. It's official Dr. Bradley Nelson, I think, on Twitter. And then Facebook, same kind of thing, and then LinkedIn, all those. So yeah, you can find us.
You're everywhere.
Yeah, I guess so.
Discover Healing, The Emotion Code. You can find it on Amazon. Discover Healing, and then your own. Then you have The Emotion Code, the healing, where the healers you can learn to get certified and stuff, and learn that practice, and impact your own communities. So very cool. Thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate you, brother.
Well, thank you, Joel. I appreciate the time because my whole purpose is to just get this work out to the world, to as many people as we possibly can. And I believe and know it is going to change the world. But so getting an opportunity like yours to connect with everybody that is connected to you is a wonderful opportunity for me. So thank you. Appreciate it a lot.
Yeah. Thank you. Oh man. Awesome stuff.